built, and we can save precious resources in the process. What if these combined worlds were available to anyone, so that their innovations could take you anywhere? What if we could use these worlds to transform the way we live, work, move, and create? To do something about food security and transform the way we deliver quality healthcare? What if these combined real and digital worlds let us build zero-emission factories that are more adaptable and productive? To transform transportation for people and goods to be more reliable, more efficient, and carbon neutral? What if we could make our energy supplies more sustainable, our buildings smarter, and our cities more livable? What if these things weren't just part of a grand vision, but the world we live in, where ideas from anywhere can solve real problems everywhere?
Can we do something about this?
Oh, there's definitely something that can be done about this.
Okay. By when?
Our consensus says by 2030.
Well, let's make it 2030 tonight. Clock's ticking. Let's go. Let's combine the real and the digital worlds to make big changes for everyone.
Can we do something about the music?
How's this?
That's better.
Pretty good. But don't we do something about replacing these?
On it. First comes a digital twin of the factory. Then you optimize it, so you can build the real one that produces batteries in record time. Here you go.
I'm happy. What about you?
Well, actually, can we do something to make the city more livable?
Got some ideas?
But can you make them happen?
Well, yeah. How about using data and AI to transform urban life to be smarter and more energy efficient? Even updated your suit.
Whoa, thanks.
What about trains?
Yeah. Again, using a digital twin to help design and build a real hydrogen-powered train.
Can you do my homework for me? Please do not help him with that.
Wait, who are you?
Siemens.
take your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to announce the arrival of our esteemed guest of honor for today's event, Yang Berhormat Tuan Gobind Singh Deo, Minister of Digital Malaysia. Thank you, everyone. May you kindly take your seats. Thank you, everyone. Distinguished panelists, honored guests, members of the media, and fellow colleagues. Good morning, and a very warm welcome to the Siemens Data Center Conference. On behalf of the team, we would like to express our sincere gratitude for your participation today, both in person and virtually. This conference, with the theme Shaping the Future of Data Centers in Malaysia, is brought to you exclusively by Siemens, a leading provider of resilient, efficient, and sustainable technology for data centers in collaboration with Malaysiakini, Digital News Asia, and KiniEvents. Before we proceed, I would like to invite Mr. Jiva from Sofitel Hotel Damansara to provide a safety briefing.
Thank you. Good morning. Welcome to Sofitel Kuala Lumpur Damansara. My name is Jiva. I'm going to give short fire safety procedure about this building. In case of fire or any emergency, you will hear continuous fire alarm bell and followed by announcement. The announcement will tell you you need to evacuate the building immediately or not. Sometimes we will play investigation announcement. So please give us 3 minutes, less than 3 minutes. We will investigate. If we need to evacuate the building, we will play announcement, evacuation announcement. If there is a false alarm, we will apologize and we will play false alarm announcement. Let's say it's emergency evacuation announcement. Our team member, which is standby here, immediately they will direct you to nearest emergency stage because we are at level 2, final exit at ground floor. So they will bring you to directly to direct emergency assembly point, which is right opposite our hotel lobby. After the process done, once building free from danger, duty manager will update to re-entry process. Clear? Any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jiva. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Mr. Tindaro Danze, President and CEO of Siemens Malaysia, to deliver the opening remarks.
So, Your Excellency Tuan Gobind, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to our data center event. I'm very pleased to have you here and see a good turnout. We kept the invitees quite limited, but be aware that this session is also being streamed online, so we have a lot of online viewers as well. I thought for an opening, I would like to share basically 3 main thoughts of mine that I would like that this is encouraging you to have fruitful conversation in the networking events. Now, I think as a starter, I'd like to invite you to imagine you stand in front of a big Olympic swimming pool. And while you're standing there looking at that swimming pool, just imagine how much water actually this swimming pool contains. Any idea? It's about 2.5 million liters, one swimming pool. Now, everybody of us knows that a data center needs a lot of water to be cooled down, right? Now, if you take that analogy and you say, look, an average data center of a capacity of 100 megawatt would actually need about 600 plus swimming pools, Olympic swimming pools, or equivalent to about 1.5 billion liters a year, just to cool 100 megawatt. Now, we all know, and here are the big growth rates that are bouncing back and forth, and I think the Ministry of Digital talked about 13, 14% CAGR from now until 2030, 2022. And I'm not so sure if that's enough. If we look into the new development of DeepSeek, let's see how this is firing up, or maybe slowing down. But it's a figure that we are looking into, probably a capacity by 2027, somewhere around 2.2 gigawatt, plus minus, right? Now that would be equal to about 14,000 Olympic swimming pools of water, or about 35 billion liters of water needed to cool that down. Assuming it's the same technology and the same kind of technology of servers you have to cool. Might be, might be not. There might be higher demand of water coming our way. Now, at the same time, to make things even more challenging, we have to acknowledge that our water industry is having about 37% of water being lost on the way from the utility to the user. In the utility sector, we call that non-revenue water. Now, that's the challenge we have. A lot of water will be demanded, a lot of water getting lost on the way, and still, we are pushing for more data centers to come online. So that bears the question, how are we going to deal with that? How are we going to deal with this challenge in between? How are we going to make sure that we have enough water to begin with, and then make sure that the water efficiently comes to where it's needed? So we need to talk about circularity of water. We need to talk about perhaps desalination plants, and this is why we also took the effort that when we have a panel today, that we have one voice talking about the water demand and how we're going to deal with that, and what we need to keep in mind when pushing for more data centers to come online. Now, also today, the water that we use for data centers is potable water. So it's water that also you would bring to a household, right? Now, speaking of households, you can look at the same thing from the electricity point of view. If you again would go with the 100 megawatt data center capacity, the power you need to run this is equivalent to 55,000 households. Now you take the same assumption, we have somewhere around 2.2 gigawatt by 2027, plus minus, right? That would equal up to 1.2 million households. That's almost the same amount of households you have in Singapore altogether. That's massive. And we all know that the power we consume today is mainly powered by fossil fuel. So on one hand side, the government is looking for a transformation of the energy sector to get a better mix of renewable energies versus fossil fuel. And on the other side, we are ramping up the demand of electricity. So that's another challenge we have to own, we have to look into. And then we can talk about, all these beautiful solar farms that we're going to build. But the question is, how are we going to feed that energy into the network, in the grid? Is the grid, the infrastructure we have, ready to take that up and distribute? And I believe the only way to look at this is to think about digital technology that allows us to simulate this electricity flow and to predict grid loads and onboarding of renewable energy. But then also, my last thought is around the impact data centers will have for the local Malaysian economy. And I hear our Minister of Industry saying the vision is that Malaysia becomes not only the hub for ASEAN, but Asia Pacific. It's a big ambition. Now also, looking at that, what is the impact if we really go for this ambition? What is the impact for Malaysia in specific? And one could make the math and say, look, if I invest about $1 billion into a data center project, that will create perhaps 200 jobs. I had conversations this morning, they say, oh no, it's much less than that. 200 is very optimistic. It's because the more these data centers are automated, the less you need. So maybe it's below 200. And in comparison, investing $1 billion into semiconductor creates about 1,000 jobs plus. So the question is, what's in for Malaysia? What's in for the society? And there is, for me, the spot where we have to talk about the digital economy. So how are we going to make sure the data centers are not just beautifully built, and given that the infrastructure would be there, water and electricity, what is the impact on creating jobs here in Malaysia? And only having a frank conversation how we can encourage business owners in Malaysia to stay and build their digital economy here. How we can do that. And this is a reason why we also, among other panelists, we have Maida today and 𝐸𝐚𝐧𝐬𝐬 in the invitee list. 𝐸𝐚𝐧𝐬𝐬 will join us on the panel, because I think this we have to keep on our radar as well. As beautiful that it is, all the investment in data centers, we need to think about who are the off-takers, who makes use of it, and how we build an economy around this that is benefiting the local society here in Malaysia. So, summing it up, I think these are the three thoughts I want to offer you to take away when you have conversations today in the break and when you listen to the panel and the questions you may ask there. What is about electricity, efficiency, CO2 footprint, how are we going to handle that? What is our plan? What are the regulations coming up? How are we going to deal with water, circularity, etc.? I'm looking very much forward to that conversation. And last but not least, how we can make sure that in parallel of building up all these data centers, we're having also a flourishing digital economy happening here in Malaysia. We as Siemens are certainly one stakeholder as in having a conversation about technology, how we can help from a technology point of view, but it needs all of us. It needs you as operators, it needs us as the technology provider, it needs the government as the regulator factors to have a common understanding of what are the challenges and what are possible mitigation plans. And this is really what we aim to achieve with this meeting and this conference today, to induce these conversations to happen, and hopefully throughout the day building connections that then carry forward and have off-site conversation to develop these thoughts further and coming up with solid plans for the future of Malaysia. So in that spirit, I'm very glad to have you here and invite you to have a fruitful conversation that will make this vision of Malaysia becoming the hub for Asia Pacific, make it a meaningful reality for Malaysia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tindaro. It is now my honor to invite Tuan Gobind Singh Deo, Minister of Digital Malaysia, to the stage to deliver the keynote address.
Thank you very much, Madam MC, Mr. Tindaro Danjay, President, CEO of Siemens Malaysia, Tuan Anwar, Faris Fazil, CEO MDEC, Charles Santiago, good friend, Chairman, Suranjaya Perkhidmatan Air Negara, Dato' Prabha Raja, Group Executive Chairman, Basis Bay, Pramesh Chandran, co-founder Malaysiakini, Mr. Hazril Hanif, Vice President and Head of Grid Software, Siemens Malaysia, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, salam perpaduan, salam Malaysia Madani, and a very good morning to all of you. First and foremost, let me take this opportunity to thank you for inviting me to this very important event. My heartfelt gratitude to Siemens, Malaysiakini, Digital News Asia, and KiniEvents for also covering this event, for organizing and covering this event this morning. I think it's quite clear that we can see that there is a great commitment towards us all advancing this important dialogue around data centers and digital infrastructure, which is most valuable, and I'm sure that this will become the basis of the conversations that we are going to have further, not just here today, but moving ahead this year. We are at an important junction. We want to build Malaysia as being this leading data hub. And I think we understand that moving ahead, there's huge impact that data centers will have on how it is we decide we want to shape our digital economy moving ahead. And the figures speak for themselves. The Malaysian Digital Economy Blueprint, which we launched in 2021, very ambitious, speaks about how it is we can see our digital economy moving from 23% to 25.5% at the end of this year. And of course, now with ASEAN and our thinking of how it is we can create this entity which moves ahead, 700 million strong in population, huge economic potential, we understand that moving ahead, technology is key if we are to succeed. And because of that, we have to now think about how it is we can build structures in our country that will allow us to sustain what it is we need to do moving ahead. So it's about structure, and it is also about governance. It's about us thinking about how it is we can make sure that as we move ahead and things unfold, we are in a position to understand how it impacts on policies that we already have and how it is we need to be agile, flexible, so that we can shift our position in the event such is necessary. An example of this, of course, is how it is we see the impact of DeepSeek on our thinking of data centers, of how it is technology develops. You find that technology is going to move quickly and it's going to present new opportunities that will require us to think again about how it is we as a country are ready for such technology. Now, the Ministry of Digital plays an important role in looking at how it is we can create that overall infrastructure that we require so that we can build an ecosystem that is able to sustain technology and how we use it as we move ahead. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I think when we speak about data centers, we have to look at certain guidelines that we have. We have the data center planning guidelines that was approved by the cabinet recently. These are guidelines that are put in place, designed to standardize and streamline application and planning approval processes for stakeholders involved in data center development. And I think what is important is if we have clear guidelines, site planning guidelines and procedures for development applications, then of course that helps us facilitate an environment which I think would be more conducive to investment and ensuring that our resources are allocated effectively. The guidelines will not only support the ease of doing business, but also complement the overall data center industry ecosystem They emphasize again, as I said earlier, the importance of strategic location planning for data centers, ensuring that developments align with designated land use zones. I think an approach whereby you have guidelines which are able to design and show us quite clearly where it is we move when it comes to how it is to develop data centers. I think that is important. It is crucial to us maintaining a balance between industrial growth and community well-being as well, as buffer zones will be required for data centers located near residential areas, which I think provide problems on its own, such as noise disturbances that need to be mitigated. So, as I said earlier, we look at it from a physical perspective first. You literally have to build data centers, and for that purpose, I think there's a necessity for us to understand that processes are involved. The question is, how are we to understand these processes, understand the problems of the past that has resulted in there being delays, commit ourselves to create ease of doing business, facilitate, fast-track these applications, but at the same time still maintain that balance. Make sure that our priorities are in place. We know that there's a need for us to facilitate these applications, but at the same time, there are communities involved, residential areas involved, and I think there are concerns that are expressed which are very, very important and need to be addressed as well. So in that regard, the view of how it is we can ensure that there's this balance is important, and these guidelines serve that purpose. We are also looking at how it is after you build data centers, you have to understand requirements, resources that you need to ensure that these data centers are up and running, not just now, but in future as well. I think we all know the impact of water and energy consumption of data centers. This is a conversation that we've all had. But again, having these conversations must necessarily lead us to understanding the need for us to have clear policy, clear direction on what is necessary now so that we're able to build an ecosystem which is sustainable for the next 10 to 15 years. Now, how do we do this? So recognizing the problem is one thing, but looking for solutions, then implementing the solutions become very, very important. To me, this is where governance comes in, and this is key. So you build structures, then you understand the challenges involved. You need to have governance that will allow you to facilitate how it is you ensure that these structures and what these structures do in terms of data centers is able to sustain for the next 10 to 15 years. So you look at things like how it is we can work to enhance our renewable energy capacity. That, in order for us to meet the growing demand from these providers, we look at initiatives such as the Green Lane Pathway, which aims to streamline power approvals while promoting sustainable practices across our data center landscape. In addition to these efforts, we're developing new guidelines on power usage effectiveness, otherwise known as PUE, and water usage effectiveness as well, WE. Very important because that will set minimum sustainability requirements for new data centers coming online, and these guidelines we hope will come online in 2025. Now, these guidelines, ladies and gentlemen, are being created under the guidance of what we call SDCC, or Standard and Industrial Research Institute of Malaysia, and I hope that we will see how it is these guidelines ensure that our facilities meet not just the local demands and challenges that we anticipate ahead, but also global standards that are currently already in place for managing high volumes of power and water consumption as we go along. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as we build a comprehensive data center ecosystem, it is crucial that we identify and also bridge existing gaps that may hinder investment and growth. Key challenges, I think, include developing that robust talent pool that we need. We speak about this all the time. We understand it's a problem. The question is there focus given to ensuring that we set a time limit to come up with solutions to the problem. And of course, how are we going to involve the industry in us designing these solutions as we go along? Now, I think that if you look at challenges, apart from the talent pool and this lack of talent that we anticipate moving ahead, we also need to think about how it is we can start pivoting things into new technologies, such as cloud service offering beyond hyperscalers. We need to look at improving IP backbone. We have to look at how it is we can deal with issues relating to subsea cable capacity. We also have to look at how it is we can ensure that we are thinking about increasing access to prefabrication resources. The government recognizes these pressing gaps, and I can assure you we are actively collaborating with industry stakeholders to develop targeted strategies that address these issues. Last night, I had a dinner dialogue with a group. Karamjit is in the room. He organized it, I must thank him for that. It's a very interesting conversation that we had. Very important as well, because with conversations like this, you understand that there is so much energy around the subject. Data, technology, what it does, how it improves everything, it changes everything. And then you understand the concerns that industry have. They are thinking about how it is things should shape as we move along. And I think that's important. But I said to them that there's a different perspective that they also need to think about when it comes to how governments look at building ecosystems. We need to think of how it is we can put in place, as I said earlier, a structure that is going to enable you to do what it is you need to do with technology moving ahead. So for us, we are definitely aligned with you when it comes to looking at what it is you think needs to be done now that will improve your industry. But the question is how it is, or how do we actually look at building a structure that provides the capacity for all industries to succeed in this new era of technology and its development. So when we look at it from a much larger perspective. We look at how it is we can build guidelines, standards, regulations, even legislation that is necessary so that we can go ahead, or we can move ahead. We recently set up the National AI Office, the 12th of December last year. The thinking was to look at how it is we can understand centers of excellence. We speak about problems associated with different industries. We know that these problems of the past may now be able to be solved using technology, particularly AI. But the question is how do we ensure that there is structure that allows us to bring all of it together? How do we make sure that we are able to build an ecosystem that allows us to develop national AI policies that will be able to deal and solve these problems of the past? So you have National AI Office that looks at certain areas. It looks at investments. Why? Because we need to make sure that whilst we understand where technology is going, we are also focused on what we need in terms of hardware so that we can enable an ecosystem to develop that allows us to innovate, find those solutions, and subsequently implement them. In Davos, at an event, the Prime Minister was asked about looking at the health industry, the health sector. And I said that, you have problems associated with the health sector. We know what problems are. We identify them through the health ministry. We look for solutions. But remember that after you find the solutions, you must also have an ecosystem that allows you to use those solutions. So this is why the National AI Office looks at investments. How it is we're going to ensure that we are focused now on investments. We look at what it is we need in the next 5 years. Make sure that in 5 years' time, when we sit here in this room, we already have an ecosystem in place, which consists of those machines, items, products that you require so that you can actually succeed using technology of the times. 2018, we had conversations about data centers. That time I was Minister of Communications and Multimedia. We started conversations with big companies. Adila is here, Microsoft, AWS. And now in 2025, we see those investments. We see how important those investments are. We realize that you need to have data centers. You need to start thinking about data ecosystems. What about the next 5, 10 years? What next? So the National AI Office looks at that. Then it looks at how it is we can ensure that there's innovation, because you can have the structures in place. You can have all the machinery that you require, data centers that you require, but you must have innovation to make sure that you're able to make full use of the ecosystem that you have. Now, in order to have innovation, you also need collaboration. You must understand, and we must understand as government, that we're moving in a new era, a time in which industry plays a crucial part in telling us how they think things will develop moving ahead. We must make sure that we facilitate a process by which they can communicate with us. We can understand their needs, look at what it is we need to do to support them. And I think this is something that needs to be looked at as a priority, and that's the reason why we have the National AI Office to do that. Then, of course, if you have necessary investments, you have the machinery, the ecosystem, you have innovation, you have collaboration, you must look at policy. So from all of that, we need policy guidelines. And of course, your policy guidelines, taking it one step further, you may need even to start thinking of how it is you can legislate in Parliament to make sure that these policies that you have are actually crystallized into legal provisions. Bodies that you have, such as the National AI Office, perhaps become statutory bodies, have sufficient resources, expertise, and the mechanism by which it can actually interact with the industry, so that moving ahead, we know that we are on the right path, and all of us have these discussions together. So I think when we look at those gaps, as I said earlier, this is one of those areas that we think about, AI, National AI Office. The second part, of course, is data. AI, we've had different types of technology, and I think you're going to see things develop as you go along. But data governance becomes key. So when we sit here today and speak about data, I think you need to start thinking about how it is, perhaps there's a need for us to focus on data governance. An example, for certain industries to see the impact of AI, certain data is required. Health industry, for example, it starts with making sure that you have medical records that are digitized. If everything is analog, you're going to have problems because you're not going to be able to start that process by which you have that data that you're able to then analyze, use, and of course, develop solutions with. So that's just one area. We're looking at town development, for example. You will need access. You will need access to data from certain departments in government. So the whole question of how it is we digitize things from scratch, we start all together, making sure that there are processes that facilitate, enable data exchange, for example. This is the reason why in December last year, we made it a point to ensure that we are able to pass the data sharing bill. Because you can have all this data, but if you're not able to share it, then of course, you won't see the true impact of AI. So we need to start thinking about these structures. And I think this is where the Ministry of Digital plays an important part. Looking ahead to 2025, I think we are looking at significant developments in the data center landscape. I'm informed, and I think this is, the figure may be a bit lower than I anticipated, but I'm told that we are looking at approximately 17 new data centers set to come online in Selangor itself, right? And we're preparing for serious demands in water and energy for these data centers as we go along. The growth in Selangor alone, as I said, 17 data centers in a year. Now, that's a lot. This growth to me underscores the importance of strategic planning and collaboration among industry players to ensure that the infrastructure that we have in place can support this expansion sustainably. I think, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, As we gather here, let us all think of how it is we can speak about this new opportunity from different perspectives. Let us talk about it from an industry perspective. Let us talk about it from a commercial perspective. Let us talk about it from a safety perspective, how does cybersecurity play in all of this? And let us ultimately say to ourselves that we must also think of how we can build structures that will enable an ecosystem to develop, an ecosystem that will help and ensure that all of you are able to do what you need to do to succeed in this new technological world as we move ahead. I stand here as Minister of Digital, and I can tell you this, our government is committed to ensure that we take steps necessary to build this ecosystem with you. We are here to help, we are here to work with you, collaborate, and of course, as I said, what is important is conversations like this must carry through to the next stage. After conversations like this, we must ask ourselves what needs to be done next, and we must start working on it immediately. We want to make sure that you succeed, because if you succeed, then we succeed together as a nation. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish you a pleasant conference ahead. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you, Tuan Gobind, for that insightful speech. Before we move on to the much anticipated topic on Malaysia's readiness to be the DC hub of Asia Pacific, we appreciate your patience as our team prepares the stage for the discussion. Please direct your attention to the screen where we will play a brief video. Thank you very much, Sofitel team. Now, in this first session, we will explore Malaysia's ambition to become the leading data center hub in the region. But how prepared are we for this vision, and how can we ensure long-term sustainable growth for the data center market in the country? To help us answer this, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome our expert panel to the stage Yang Bahagia Dato' IR Megat Jalaluddin Megat Hassan, President and CEO of Tenaga Nasional Berhad, Mr. Anwar Faris Fazil, CEO Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation MDEC, Yang Bahagia Datuk Prabha Thiagaraja, Group Executive Chairman Basis Bay, Tuan Charles Santiago, Chairman Suruhanjaya Perkhidmatan Air Negara SPAN, moderated by Mr. Hazril Hanif, Vice President and Head of Grid Software, Siemens Malaysia. Hazril, over to you.
Assalamualaikum and very good morning, everyone. It's great to be here, to be moderating this panel session today. Again, my name is Hazril. Together with me on stage, Dato' Megat of TNB, Mr. Anwar of MDEC, Dato' Prabha of Basis Bay, and Mr. Charles from SPAN. On behalf of Siemens, it's a pleasure having all of you with us here today to discuss on Malaysia's Malaysia's rise as the leading data center hub in Asia Pacific. Let's give them a round of applause. Before we start, we dive into the panel, just a reminder, at the end of the discussion, there will be a Q&A session where you can ask the questions to the panelists. And those on-site mics will be provided, and those joining online, please drop in your questions in the chat box. Okay, to start the discussion today, I would like to hear from each of our panelists on Malaysia's readiness to position itself as the data center hub of Asia Pacific. So maybe we start with Dato' Megat.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and very good morning. First and foremost, thank you very much for having Tenaga Nasional as part of the session today. So on the and esteemed panelists on the stage. So regarding the position of data center, we can see the trends worldwide is that the demand for AI, demand for e-commerce, demand for Internet of Things, demands for cloud computing make it a data center, a business that is going to be a focus for many countries, including Malaysia. So looking at this data center play, I think it is an ecosystem play. So with respect to the readiness, we believe that Malaysia is in a good position with respect to making us front runner with respect to becoming the hub for data center because of our strong ecosystem play. And most of the ecosystem play is actually related to infrastructure because data centers requires these 5 basic ecosystem for it to thrive. First, of course, the power requirement. Second, the cooling requirement, mostly from water. Third is coming from the availability of land. Fourth is connectivity. And fifth, security, physical and cyber. So I believe today the country is well positioned to provide the best ecosystem for data centers. And on top of that, it is actually supported by a very conducive policy and that encourage investment to the country. So I think we are well in the position to do that. And this is also evident by the news that you can see in the market that many of the big players are actually coming to Malaysia to be here and build the data centers for the world.
Thank you, Dr. Megat. I think interesting. We'll dive a little bit deeper into that later on. Mr. Anwar, would you like to share your thoughts?
Yes, thank you, and Assalamualaikum, and a very good morning to everyone. Thank you, Hazril, and my panel. Thank you, Siemens, for inviting me. To answer your question, so let me just start by saying that MDEC's main mission is to future-proof Malaysia's digital economy. through creating high-value jobs, establishing the country as a regional powerhouse. And, I have my ABCs. Advanced digital infrastructure that's available in Malaysia. B, business-friendly environment. I see my friends from MIDA here. We work very well together with the establishment of the Digital Investments Office, where we draw in investments on the digital nature. And C is commitment to stability, be it political stability, policy stability. So there's a lot of positive reasons for it to be in Malaysia. And there are 53 data centers in operation right now, 24 in construction, and that has brought in about USD 24 billion in investments. As Datuk Megat said, we are committed to how we can commit to being a data center hub. There is an environment and ecosystem that we are looking at, and at MDEC we are looking at how we can provide this. We have many reasons where we have incentives, we have business facilitations, we have access to cheaper energy. Datuk Megat talked about it, but if I remember correctly, it's about USD 10 cents per kilowatt hour compared to Singapore, which is about USD 27 cents. So there's a lot of reasons for it, and data centers are important for having data onshore and driving a lot of innovation. The AI boom really has given drive to this, and we need to be able to be in a position to accept and receive the investments and benefits that we give. Having said that, the Prime Minister has stated some concerns about the data center investments because the ROI may not be commensurate with the jobs that we create. However, I think guardrails are important. Right? We are ready, but we need to be able to create guardrails in terms of environment, how we transition from a manufacturing base to high quality job, high paying job, and these are the things which I think we need to give thought to. I'm very sure this was the same when the second industrial revolution, when the Ford Model T was created. It's a boom, but how do we make sure that everything's in line? How do we make sure that technology is in line? We make sure our people are taken care of. We make sure that the environment is not taken advantage of. So that's how I think Malaysia is ready for the data center revolution for us.
Interesting. Thanks, Encik Anwar. So, Dato' Prabha, so what's your take on this?
I'm an investor, right?
Yes.
So definitely bought in, staying here. Been investing in data centers from 1996, right? So that's a long time ago. Seen the evolution. It was never a big issue with water in the past. It's always power.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who are unaware, and everyone here, we've probably got the most stable power next to Singapore. We've never had outages. In my lifetime, I remember of a brownout when Mahathir made some noise over. And I remember him saying, might as well tie our grid to Thailand and bring them down as well when he was angry. Outside of that, and that was when I was a young man, right? And that has evolved. So as an investor, I've seen great changes from a data center I built in '96, the one we did in 2000, which is retrofitting data centers. And historically, that's why the definition of a data center is important. What exactly do you call a data center? It used to be called a computer room. Today it's called data centers, right? So the one I built in 2008 and the one I built in 2009 were purpose-built. So the first purpose-built data center was 2008, 2009, and touted as Asia's first green data center. Look, you can lay claim first and everything comes after, right? But simple things like just putting a power switch at a centralized corridor where you switch lights off or you have a centralized, wasn't a thought. Where the sun rises, where the sun sets, wasn't a thought. The idea of cool aisle, hot aisle, cold aisle, which is today very basic, was not in existence in IT. So many things are just common sense, which aren't done. And it is not something that is rocket science. Everyone since then has been chasing the end user. We've since built other data centers and looked at acquiring data centers in Hong Kong, So I looked at data centers in Kowloon in the early 2000s, and I like to use the analogy of Johor being the Kowloon of what I saw in Hong Kong. It is just common sense, right? Price, everything was cheaper off the island, right? So it was common sense. Data centers were not in the island side, right? However, we need to figure out why was everything in Singapore instead of Malaysia from a long time back. Why so? Our power was always cheaper. Our people were always, let's not call them cheaper, but more cost effective. Our resources were better off. Our infrastructure was not too far off, the proximity to a nation. So therein lies, we've always said Cyberjaya, way ahead of its time, 1996. And therein lies the challenge for the likes of MDEC and others. We had the foresight, and Mahathir did have the foresight to gather people together and put something that looked very attractive. And as TMB would be aware, Cyberjaya has dual power source on every plot of land. It's the only one I'm aware of anywhere in the world that I'm aware of. Purpose-built location. Very few people know Cyberjaya has dual power source from two distinct locations. So it was perfect for data centers. When Mahathir then called in all the top leaders of the world, if you remember, everyone from Infosys to right up to Sun, and I see Chiam here, that's an old Sun guy who's now gone the other side to Equinix. Wonderful. I need Malaysians here as far as possible, mate, if you don't mind. That's the story. That's the story. Story for another day, Daryl. Don't get upset. Don't get upset. But if I may, I just want to bring out something that people need to understand. So what was different? If you ask me, it's the optics, how we sell ourselves. Malaysia has undersold itself to the likes of Singapore for the longest time. Policies and governance is also super key. I've been in the region. There was an ask whether we can do Asia-Pac. Let me just tell you, I've had a client in our infrastructure, a financial institution, for the last 16 years supporting Asia-Pac for the longest time. So it's done already. Can it be done some more? The simple answer is yes. The issue is now once Singapore closed up, it's a no-brainer, data center demands, everything's going really fast. The question you have to ponder and what we need to do is what kind of clients are we after? There are three types of data centers. There's the hyperscalers. There's the traditional data centers which focus on large banks, financial institutions, people who need no single point of failure, RMIT guidelines, etc. Today, Bank Negara is about the only one that regulates industry today, right? Now, there are others who naturally have their standards imposed upon them, multinationals that get imposed upon them, and they bring that to the table, right? So these are traditional DCs. Then there is the hyperscalers. And you're down to counting in your hand, in the past at least, the AWS, Microsoft, Google. There's like 5 or 6 big names that everyone's after. And the traditional players, whoever you may be, are after them, right? So that's one group of people. Now, that's been on until recent times. The boom of AI, which is, guys, let's get real. How different is AI? When I was doing my thesis in University of Malaya, that was an option I had, which is late 80s, right? So neural networks, artificial intelligence is the use of data as quick as possible and trying to simulate the brain. That's been there as long as time in memory, right? So if you're after AI, there are different ways to deliver we just came through big data, IoT, industry. Those in industry, the multinationals will shout loud in the US, and Asians will say, how high? Asians will say, how high, right? Even Europeans will say, how high, to be fair. So Americans lead this narrative, which is a few big multinational brands and they do the BMW, Mercedes. One guy will have the indicator on the left hand, one guy will have it on the right hand. They'll change an acronym, confuse everybody in industry. So it sounds really high tech, which it's not. So if you go back to the basics, everything is coming back to compute, which it still is today. They're all after compute now. Ultimately, it's compute, but for whom? So when people say, what's the take-up? Who's taking up? Okay, that's the level one. Who's Google after? Who's AWS after? Who's Azure after? All right, so that's the next step. So you've got the SMEs, you've got private cloud, public cloud, and you need to know the difference. The minister needs to know the difference. This is what I think. Then everything will cascade very nicely. So a hyperscaler, and then you've got the AI guys. And now the AI guys are now, between the AI guys and some of the hyperscalers, they're water hungry. I think the delta, because I've been in this industry, my clients always ask more than what is really required. So those who've been in the DC world long enough, those who do commercial positioning, of course you can come out winning. If the clients ask for so much and they only use so much, the delta is for you. And this is normally the case. So
thank you, Dato'. I think just transitioning into that. So
oh, sorry, I overdid it.
No problem.
So anyway,
no problem, Dato'.
If I may end, if one figures the delta, the water guys, it may not be as bad as it seems, I think. But I think there needs to be a study done, and then figuring this out. That's
Thank you, Dato'. I think that is transitioning to the water. So, so Mr. Charles, so what's your view on this?
Thanks, Azrael. Honorable Minister Gobind, Tindaro, CEO of Siemens, fellow speakers and friends, I bring you greetings of peace and solidarity from the Suruhanjaya Pragmatana Negara. Let me talking about getting real. Last year, there was a very important conference in Singapore, which brought about 70 to 80 different CEOs of water operators across the globe, though, from the United States right up to Australia, including Malaysia, Singapore. And the most important defining problem that everybody faced in the room was something called climate emergency. Climate emergency. And Malaysia is no stranger to that climate emergency. In fact, if you look at the World Meteorological Organization's latest report, and I'm just going to read it for you, Asia is heating up faster than the global average, and the report also describes Asia as the most disaster-hit region from weather and climate hazards. And in fact, it says Malaysia, the country that we live in, and where you get your water, Malaysia is projected to experience 200 heat wave days a year by 2050. By 2050. So water is challenged. Now, let me give you further information, make it more complicated, I must say, that according to SPAN studies of 150 water treatment plants, a good 36 treatment plants across the country, especially in Johor and Selangor, the water yield of treatment plants have dropped. Why? Because our rivers are challenged. The ecosystem of our rivers is bad, and the carrying capacity of our rivers has also dropped because of deforestation and pollution, contributing to that. And another set of information that we have to keep in mind is 81% of our drinking water comes from rivers. 81%. The remaining 18% comes from dams, and then the remaining 2-3% comes from underground. This is more to Kelantan and Terengganu. So this is where we're getting our water. So, but now you have data centers which are, as Tindaro mentioned in his presentation, water gasless, especially if you're hyperscales. So therefore, and what are we using in the data centers? We are using potable drinking water. Now, this is a disaster in the making, and is highly unsustainable. So therefore, in the next 3 to 5 years, there must be a way to transition away towards reclaimed water, rainwater harvesting, desalination, if you can afford it, and also looking at stormwater. And stormwater is a real possibility in Malaysia, partly because we have flooding all the time. So we can use that water and scale up however you want to for the data centers. Now, so therefore, we really have to transition, and we have no choice, because you do not want a situation whereby when there's a drought for 5 months, which is a possibility, Malaysia is facing some of these issues, and most of our rainwater, water that goes to the rivers are from the rain. So you can rain right in front of your house, it makes no difference. But what goes into the catchment areas, into the rivers, is what we are drinking, the 81%. So if you do, and if the weather projections which are uncertain carries on, and if you have a drought, for example, in 3-4 months, then there will be a challenge to water. So therefore, we cannot use potable drinking water forever and ever using in data centers. You have no choice, you have to transition, and this will be made, should be made mandatory. But given that we are starting unsustainably, starting with potable drinking water, and the industry needs to grow, given that we want to grow the digital economy, therefore we need to say you have 3 years, and part of the development order for your construction is you have this after 3 years, you must reach a certain level of percentage. Like for example, in the case of California, whether it's Microsoft or whether it's Amazon Web Services, they are very clear. 50% rainwater harvesting, 50% reclaimed water. So it's completely acceptable. But not in the case of Malaysia. We are starting off 100% potable drinking water. This has to transition,
Mr. Charles,
and it's going to be a challenge.
That's good, and then later we will dive into what's the plan for Malaysia then. So I think that's the overview. So now let's go dive deeper into the individual things that's there. So Dato' Megat, with the growing energy demand of data center, what transmission or power production distribution projects are there to able to support this data center growth over the next 3 to 5 years?
When we look from the power perspective, there are 2 big buckets. One is, of course, the generation of power itself. So we are talking about addressing the hyperscaler, which comes with a demand of 100 megawatt to up to 500 megawatt. But the good thing about the data center, it is, as far as consumption is concerned, it is been taken in a step. So meaning that we can see that the behavior or characteristic of data center, even though they ask for 100 megawatt, that it will take a few years to reach that kind of so-called demand. So with respect to the power sector, so the first thing that we focus is actually on the generation. And the good thing about Malaysia is that we always have this power generation system planning, whereby we monitor almost on a daily basis what is the reserve margin that is available, what is the operating margin that is available for us in the country. So the good thing about this data center boom to the country is that we have a number of good reserve margin in the past, in the last few years. So that's why we can see today we are able to basically accommodate the so-called demand of data centers that come more or less at the same time. And that is the nature of the business of data center. I think they will come in terms of the requirement in a few years. Then the business case will be built up. Then you can see the trajectory to be flattened before there's another curve. So today we are seeing this curve coming to Malaysia, and we are able to actually provide the demand because of our good reserve margin. So notwithstanding that, so the planning for us to plan up is always there. So now it's a good planning with respect to the industry, how best we plan to accommodate for the future data centers. Today, if I can remember correctly, I think we already have the demand of 5,000 megawatt of data centers to Malaysia. But the consumption today is roughly about 2,000 megawatt, which is a step load going into the 5,000. So there's a good system planning for us to basically plan up. And it's also opportunity for us with respect to the power sector, how best we shift the generation from the conventional gas and coal mix into a different kind of mix of generation. So that is an opportunity for the country to shift this generation mix simply because the data center require a sustainable or clean energy generation. So another aspect that is coming in as part of the generation mix is that we are going to have more generation coming from the RE sources, because that is where the demand is. So today we are also talking to data centers, how best we also supply not only energy, which is required 24/7, another good characteristic of the data centers, but to also supply the green energy. And today, Malaysia is blessed with solar, so we're able to provide those RE generation through solar to the data centers, even though it is on a limited time at the moment, maybe 4 to 5 hours a day. So that is from the generation perspective, planting up, and we are planting up the more and more RE sources to provide the clean energy for data centers. The second part is actually our infrastructure. This is where we are upgrading our grid to be able to transport the power from the generators to the customers, the transmissions and the distribution grid. We are upgrading this, and we can see that in the past year or so, we are upgrading this into the clusters of data centers in the country. And today we have 3 main clusters of data center. One is in the Cyberview, Cyberjaya area. Second in Serenang. Third is actually in Nusa Jaya. So these are the 3 main focus of data centers today. We are actually putting up the infrastructure, basically our main substation, here to cater for the data centers. But at the same time, we are also giving what we call, as mentioned by YB Minister, the green lane, meaning that providing the supply to data center very, very fast. And the requirement from the demand of the center, they are talking about 12 months. So far, we are able to deliver those 12 months supply to the data center. So these are the 2 main buckets that we focus with respect to the power sector. Generating and planning for more power for data centers, including green generation. Second, upgrading our infrastructure for those, especially for those clusters. And we will encourage the data centers to be more separate out, because we do have, the good thing about the country is that we do have what we call a national grid, meaning that the power can be transferred at many places of the country. So we have the 500 kV now. The grid is now at the 500 kV that is transcendence across the country. So we are hoping that we can also distribute these so-called clusters of data centers to the various parts of the country based on the land availability. So this is where the role of Tenaga Nasional to facilitate this so-called digital economy. And we believe that part and parcel of the economic growth of the country rely very much on the data center. And our company like Tenaga Nasional really likes data center because the consumption is actually consistent 24/7. So what does it mean to us as customer? In fact, this, if you look from the economic of investment and cost, this actually provide a lower cost per unit with respect to our infrastructure. So actually everybody will benefit because we build infrastructure for a certain demand. If it is a very efficient utilization, the cost per unit will be lower. Notwithstanding that, we also understand as the reliance on a single subsector may not be the best for the country. So today, our capacity of the country, generation capacity is about 27,000 megawatt. So the data centers is now approaching 5. 2 is being consumed, 5 is the planting. So I think we are very much, with respect to the reliance on the single sector, we are very much in control in that sense. And with the guidance given by the ministry and the government, how best we get the best data center here, meaning that the data centers that operate to the most efficient with the introduction of the so-called power equivalent unit, I think that will help us actually manage the whole ecosystem of power for data center. So today, on average, most of the data center is about 1.3 to 1.4 PEU equivalent unit that we can see. So hopefully, as we can see that the technology is evolving, and we can see that the consumption of electricity with respect to data center will get better and better.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Interesting. So more generation and also strengthening the grid. So I think next I'd like to ask Dr. Prabha, as the pioneer in the industry and also an investor, how does Malaysia compare to other countries as an investment destination? And also what are the key challenges, and if you can also, how can we make Malaysia even more attractive to investors?
Okay, I think we're pretty attractive. We already are the hub, and you know, well, he can thank his predecessors. He's also doing a brilliant job, and I think I totally appreciate and understand when he talks about power being from the DC world. It's not actually consistent. From your perspective, it is. From the IT demand, there are fluxes that happen month-end, evenings, depending on who your clients are and which markets they're covering, right? And that's there, depending on what type of clients you're after. Even social media, the take-up for digital is higher at night or in the daytime, depending on what you're doing. However, broad-based power is very consistent compared to your factory. I remember back in the day, you guys used to give us night rates, day rates, and all of that, right? And however, if I may, to make us more attractive, we already are. Our power has been only second to Vietnam in the region before, and even Vietnam did it very selectively on rare occasions. So we've looked, BSP has looked at investing, and we have partners in all parts of this world for the longest time, right? As I said just now, by far we were ahead of Singapore, and yet Singapore was more attractive to many. So we need to figure the optics. I still come back to policies. I still come back to the type of DC clients you want to attract. I think that's important because you want to brand up, because there are the 𝐊𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐿s and Volkswagens of the world, which I liken to where you will have the AIs and the hyperscalers who are, you know, then you've got finally the Porsches and the Ferraris, which will be your highest end and require no single point of failure. And we are the guys that want TNB to make sure nothing happens. And in Cyberjaya, they actually give a performance guarantee for the longest time, right? That they'll pay you back. So you hardly have failures. Actually, our dependence on providers like yourself with your transformer, Siemens, the UPS providers, are even more critical than TNB has been pretty good. It's very well known in the region, and it's the likes of Singapore as well. We're up there. Now, comparing that to the US, so just people get an understanding. In America, every location and geography, you negotiate rates. So you got summer rates, you got non-summer rates, you got winter rates. You got the same in Europe as well, but more so in the US. So the Americans, for the longest time, had something called uptime and TIA. Most of people here will understand. You needed to be tier 4. You needed to have 2 different power providers, 2 from different sources. Now, they made that seem like it's really good, but you know, they bring each other down. It's not one national grid, which he just mentioned just now. So you've got many grids, and sometimes they hook on each other, and you're commercially discussing. It's not regulated the way it is in Malaysia, and at the end of it, they pull each other down. So they say 2 different guys, 2 different suppliers. Ours has been as stable as hell, right? However, we would not get tier 4 data center standards because uptime was regulating. So they set the standards and said, this is where we are at. So you are tier 3 at best. Today that has evolved. Everybody has understood what I said before. Now, these conversations I used to have with my clients way back when I understood how American data centers ran, and I've visited them, spent time with them. They have clients, they have friends, so I understand this. I also understand European data centers. We looked at investing in these places, so we get it. So the design of our current DC is that. Now, I come back to holding the conversation. Now, there's no way a tropical data center standard, which is now evolving, is similar to the European or American one. So Siemens, you've got a good active, you've got R&D here. We're happy to do that. I mean, I'm happy to announce that on 21st of this month, Basis Bay is actually in partnership with University Malaya here and providing certifications for entry-level data center people, right? So this is one of our initiatives between universities now providing certificates for junior executives, and it's going to go all the way up to highest levels at some point. Now, we're not attempting to ape uptime or a TIA and then put that in. So I think industry needs to do that across. Just to say the tropical requirements are very different from, just understand it. So we are in a lead position now to make this happen. We don't need to ape. Of course, Siemens and the transform, I just spoke to your guy just now and I said, how come I don't see you in our tenders? And he said, okay, you're transformers at this stage. You haven't gone up to, or not yet in cracks and UPSs, I understand. This is where the DC guys, like your competitors, I shall not mention their names, and they have that whole string, and sometimes when a tender is out, all of them come in. Now, sorry, but I just want to get to the point that we are attractive. If there's something that we can improve on, for me, I think, and I said this to all the ministers that I can get my hands on, you got to get your policy soon out of the way, because that's the low-hanging fruit. Now, I think I had a chance to talk to Rafizi and said the same thing to him. Between yourself, YB, and him, I think let's get that out of the way quickly. It can be version 1 and you can come out. But once you have that, you know what you're trying to do. And it'll be easy for the others in the industry as well, providers, etc. Right? So that's the low-hanging fruit. Malaysia's standard they're in, China has them. I've talked about this. Vietnam has them. Others have them. We're behind. Okay, despite being a hub. So we can't wait for the hub to mature and then put in regulatory requirements, right? So that's the first thing. That's the low-hanging fruit. Policymakers need to jump in quickly. Okay, that's one. But
sorry, so in the interest of time, I think...
Can I give one more?
Okay, all right.
So the other ask is ICPT. See, ICPT has come out recent times. Historically, our power cost, while efficient, was also standard. We need to make sure ICPT, one of the attractions in power and running a business is your cost is fixed. So if TNB looks into that, like in some way, doesn't make it overly fluctuative, it's easy for business to charge their customers accordingly. And this has been attractive for Malaysia in the past. So we've got to watch this ICPT where, because we're passing it back to the client. So either they get the delta or we get the delta. So it's better to kind of get that regulated. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you very much, Dato'. So I think it is already attractive, so we can actually leverage on that to make it even more attractive than like what you have, the point you have said. So next, I think, Mr. Anwar, how does MDEC plans to support the industry's growth over the next 3 to 5 years? What key incentive or support mechanisms are there in place?
So just to echo what Dato' Prabha said, we are attractive. I think the queue in the funnel for data centers is quite extensive. 53 already in operation, and we have 2024, based on MIDA numbers, 141 billion data centers. And right now it is about how we can be selective as well, because there's a lot of progress that's happened in the past 5 years in data centers alone in Johor. I've always said, based on previous experience, data centers are hungry for power, thirsty for water. That narrative was started maybe about 3-4 years ago. But also, the only constant here is change, right? Technology has advanced, technology has increased. Some of the data center providers are now working on immersive cooling, liquid cooling, how that works. So we're being very selective in how it is. We know the incentives as given. We work really closely with MIDA on Green Lane to make sure everyone's up and running in 12 months. But I go back to my foundation, the ABCs. Really is about the advanced digital infrastructure that we have, submarine cables, stable power supply, water that is be portable or recycled. How can we work with that? B will be the business-friendly environment. We have talent. We have high-class talent, world-class talent available in Johor, available in Nusajaya, available in Sarawak. We could be advanced, opening up opportunities there in Sarawak, because Sarawak is very, very keen on cutting edge technology. And C would be the stability that we have, which is basically the conditions of stability we have policy. I take a point, Dato'. I think on policy we need to work. We need to show a lot more commitment that we have an idea what to do. And I think we will work very closely with the ministries as well. My boss is right there, so I think he heard it the first time around. But you know, it is true. If we don't catch up, Thailand is opening up, Vietnam is opening up, Australia is opening up. There's a lot of opportunities here, and it would be very remiss to us to not be able to capitalize on this. How can we safeguard? How do we set up the guardrails? Johor has a fantastic system where now the MB and the Exco for infrastructure approves data centers, and there are conditions that needs to be met. It's not just the investments, not just about human capital. It's about ESG. It's about, are you using the right water? Are you? I had a conversation with the state. They are looking at how the players in the industry can work with to recycle water from the Tebrau River. So it's win-win. The water is cleaned up, is being used for data centers, and it goes back. So there's a lot of opportunities here, and the usual ones we have. But how do we selectively look for stuff? How do we selectively identify the opportunities that we have and move up the value chain? We cannot be in the middle income trap forever. There is a conscious decision that we need to make to be able to be the destination of choice. And we are. For the past 4 or 5 years, a lot of progress that was made in Sedana itself, and that's for global data center technology. So I think that's...
Yep. Thank you very much, Mr. Anwar. So I think, Tuan Charles, water is the critical resource for data center. What is Malaysia's plan? I think just now you also spoke about it. So, but what is the plan to ensure that we have adequate supply for data centers in the next 3 to 5 years?
I think, as you correctly point out, and I think everybody has said the same thing, the water will be the biggest challenge for data centers. I think the government, the Selangor government, has started the ball rolling. It has got plans for 4 reclaimed water treatment plants, one in Cyberjaya, one in Sungai Besi, and then a third one in Nilai Impian, Negeri Sembilan, and also one in Kawasan Perindustrian Cemerlang, Johor Bahru. So you have 4 plants. But the first one, Cyberjaya, is only 10 MLD. Sungai Besi is 9 MLD. Nilai Impian is 4 MLD, and Kawasan Perindustrian Cemerlang, Johor Bahru is 4 MLD. But I would think this is actually a drop in the bucket. It's a drop in the bucket. But therefore, I think going forward, the minister and also the Ministry of Petra, which looks at wastewater, needs to really scale this up and put major priority in the 13 Malaysia plan to push for reclaimed water as the basis for use not only for data centers, but also for wafer fabrication as well. This is a strategy that other countries are also using. In the case of Tamil Nadu in India, their policy is very clear that 50% of all industrial consumption must come from reclaimed water up to the next two years. And after that, they will scale up to 80% and 100%. So we need to have that planning that we need to follow. That's number one. Number two, in terms of approvals of data centers, just in 2024, in the case of Selangor, you have 27 new data centers that have been approved, case of Selangor, involving something like 79 MLD. That means new source of new water that you have to find. That's one. And then in the case of Johor, it's only 17 new approvals involving 59 MLD. Now, you'll be thinking, how come 27 you only have 79 MLD and 17 in Johor, but the demand is much more higher? And that's because I think of hyperscales. I think this is something the minister has to consider. How many approvals you want to give for hyperscales, especially in concentrated areas like Sedana. So, for example, if you give, I think I read somewhere recently in the business papers that there's a plan to give 4 hyperscale centers in one area which has got no direct water link. And this is challenging. This is really challenging. Because, of course, everybody wants to prop up their stock market, stock prices and so on. So they keep saying, my data center is anywhere between 700 to 1,000 megawatts. Now, 700 to 1,000 megawatts involves something like 7 to 8 Olympic-sized swimming pool amounts of water per day. So how are you going to get that water? So that is why it is important to look at reclaimed water and also approval process that really has to be very stringent. And it must be done soon because these buildings are already coming up. It cannot be an afterthought. It has to be part and parcel of the building, of the design of the building itself. So for example, the other day I visited rainwater harvesting, very big company. And the owner was telling us that they have interest. People are coming, data centers are coming to them, asking them, hey, we are interested in rainwater harvesting, but only after the design approvals have all been achieved. But that's also a wrong strategy because you need to put in your rainwater harvesting as part of your design in putting up the building. So we are all doing it in the wrong direction. So therefore, I think we really need to have a very clear guideline, and the guidelines cannot be opaque, and leave it to the developers to make a decision though. This is all problematic. The government must say we only can do 3, 4 hyperscales in this place. One state, so many. So therefore, the planning gets much more easier. And don't forget, the demand for water is just not coming from data centers, but also population increase. New industries are also coming up. And then your wafer fabrication industry is also a guzzler. And population increases, all of that has to be factored in. And I think that is why we really have to be careful in our planning, strategic in our planning, and not just let everybody who comes and says, yes, we'll give you an approval. It is, I think, also good practice to say, if you have A, B, C, and D, we'll give you the approval. So therefore, I think it has to be stringent though. Just one last point is that every time there's a new technology development, for example, AI, for like another way of saying this, AI goes AI plus, and then another plus, your energy consumption goes up, and more on top of the energy consumption, your water consumption also goes up though. But the approval is only for 10 MLD. But because of the energy, because the technology changes, the 10 MLD will become 15 MLD in 1 year because of innovation and changes. So you need to factor that as part of your planning. Otherwise, you'll have data centers without water.
Okay.
And the last point is this though. These buildings are already coming up. Data centers are already coming up with the assumption that they're going to use potable water. So that is why, I mean, those of you who are here, please consider rainwater harvesting, reclaimed water as part of your design. Not after the building is up, but before you actually put up the building.
Thank you, Mr. Charles. I think that there will be a lot of people who wants to ask questions, so I think now we will open the floor for questions. You can ask the questions to the panelists. Please raise your hand if you have any question, and one of the team members will pass you the mic. For those online, you can put up your questions in the chat box. So please state your name, your organization, and to whom the question is directed to. Anyone from the floor? No? I think it's very crystal clear, I guess, the whole discussion. All right, so I think like what YB has mentioned, oh, there is one question at the back.
To TNB probably, and also the panel. Hi, my name is Dinesh. I'm from Basis Bay. Just a quick question on the position, right, of the panels or the ministers in terms of renewable energy or sustainable power, right, as we speak. And Dato mentioned TNB's aspiration on green energy and so on. And I've also come across, read news about Engineer Megat saying, Tuan Engineer Megat, that nuclear is a power option to be explored. So how is TMB progressing on TNB, SMR, right?
Sorry, I think since the interest of time, can we take this question offline after this?
Yeah, sure.
If that's okay,
yeah,
right?
That's fine, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I would like to thank all the panelists for today's session. Like what YB has mentioned, this has to have a lot of discussion, so feel free to discuss with any of our panelists, and we have to start this so that we have a sustainable future and that we can become the data center hub of Asia Pacific region. Thank you very much, everyone. Please.
Thank you, everyone. Kindly remain on stage because I would like to now invite Mr. Tindaro Danze for the exchange of token of appreciation and also for a quick photo session. Let's give a big round of applause for our panelists. Thank you, gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for a quick break. Please feel free to help up yourself to refreshments outside this hall. We will ring the bell for the next session. Thank you very much.
It's human nature, a hunger to explore, to imagine, to invent. We're wired to ask questions. The more impossible, the better. And the challenges of a modern world have innovators, engineers, all of us looking far and wide for answers. What if the answers aren't out there, but here? With technologies that combine the real and the digital worlds, we can massively accelerate the rate of progress and address the world's most pressing problems. We can replicate the realities of physics, defying the limits of time and enabling innovators to design, build, and test each part of product before it is built. And we can save precious resources in the process. What if these combined worlds were available to anyone, so that their innovations could take you anywhere? What if we could use these worlds to transform the way we live, work, move, and create? To do something about food security and transform the way we deliver quality healthcare? What if these combined real and digital worlds let us build zero-emission factories that are more adaptable and productive? To transform transportation for people and goods to be more reliable, more efficient, and carbon neutral? What if we could make our energy supplies more sustainable, our buildings smarter, and our cities more livable? What if these things weren't just part of a grand vision, but the world we live in, where ideas from anywhere can solve real problems everywhere?
Can we do something about this?
Oh, there's definitely something that can be done about this.
Okay. By when?
Our consensus says by 2030.
Let's make it 2030 tonight. Clock's ticking. Let's go. Let's combine the real and the digital worlds to make big changes for everyone.
Can we do something about the music?
How's this?
That's better.
Pretty good. But don't we do something about replacing these?
On it. First comes a digital twin of the factory. Then you optimize it, so you can build the real one that produces batteries in record time. Here you go.
I'm happy. What about you?
Well, actually, can we do something to make the city more livable?
Got some ideas.
But can you make them happen?
Well, yeah. How about using data and AI to transform urban life to be smarter and more energy efficient? Even updated your suit.
Whoa, thanks.
What about trains?
Yeah. Again, using a digital twin to help design and build a real hydrogen-powered train.
Can you do my homework for me?
Please do not help him with that.
Wait, who are you?
Siemens.
Thank you, everyone, and welcome back. Kindly please take your seats as we will begin panel 2. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the second half of the conference. In this session, we will explore the critical factors involved in winning and sustaining business in the digital industry. Without further ado, please welcome Ms. Adila Junid, Director of Legal and Government Affairs, Microsoft, Mr. Cham Tat In, Managing Director, Equinix, Mr. Daryl Sinapa, Country Head, ST Telemedia Global Data Center, Mr. Rainer Cham, Sales Manager, Smart Infrastructure, Electrical and Automation, Siemens Malaysia, moderated by Mr. Karamjit Singh, CEO of Digital News Asia.
Okay, hi everyone. We're going to get started. I think the first panel ran quite a bit long, but we will keep this on point and we will actually try to take at least one question from the floor and we will answer the question. Even if you ask about nuclear, we're not going to shy away from that, okay? So I want to introduce who the panelists are because you already have their names here. But really in this session, we're going to delve into critical factors involved in selecting or building, right, the ideal data center facility and gain hopefully exclusive insights, right, into evolving cloud services market over the next 3 to 5 years. That's going to be the last question for them. And also discover how advanced technologies are driving global adoption through enhanced, you've got flexibility, scalability, sustainability, super important. So we're going to hopefully learn how these innovations can transform and propel Malaysia, our data center industry, to new heights, because apparently we're already a leader in the region. So we'll go. So that's the preamble. I'm going to start now. We're going to ask the first question. So the first 3 questions are for them on an individual basis. Then the last 2 questions are actually for them to answer collectively as a group. Adila, so as the only rose among the thorns, so that's why we moved her into the middle, right? Not following the picture here. As a global software giant, your data center journey in Malaysia began actually with co-location. And in 2021, then they announced, plans to launch a data center region here. And so I'm going to ask what factors drove this investment decision. Were there like incentives, cost, regulations, talent, infrastructure?
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me here today, and thank you for the question, Karamjit. So, I guess I'll start out with, at the end of the day, so Microsoft is a technology company, but to bring you that technology, there is, of course, an entire tech stack, a huge portion of which is, of course, the infrastructure and the data centers. So, at the end of the day, it's really demand for the services that are enabled by this infrastructure that drives the creation of that infrastructure to deliver those services, right? And of course, from this morning we heard there's other factors that are definitely relevant, which is that the availability of the resources and environment that enables that infrastructure to come about, right? So there's power, there's water, there's land, there's talent. But really at the heart of it, it is the usage and adoption of the technology that is brought by the technology stack, anchored by the infrastructure. And Asia is hugely fast-growing, demand for digital services, cloud services, AI, in the region, of which Malaysia is wonderfully placed to be that hub from which those services can be delivered, right? That this is really very great time for Malaysia. And it's in a very competitive position to be able to leverage on the opportunities that it sees now. And so those are all highly relevant factors beyond any one single factor. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. She's in charge, you can see her profile, right? Head of Legal and Government. So she's very careful with the words, and yet she's saying we are wonderfully placed. So very interesting. So I guess we can expect, bigger investment decisions from Microsoft, right, coming towards Malaysia at some point. Okay, now a second question is for both the data center facilities providers, and the same question for the two of them, which is our potential as a data center hub is obviously well known, but so are its challenges. So both of you have recently made decisions to invest in Malaysia. When I say recent, for Equinix 2022 and for SCT 2023. So what were the factors again that made you choose Malaysia, and what do you see as the key opportunities here? So Daryl, we'll start with you first. And then Shyam.
Okay, thanks, Karamjit, and thank you, everyone. I think the factors pretty much been quite often repeated by most of the panelists also. But again, if I was to specifically talk about STT, GDC, and what were the key drivers that would have brought us as an investor here, would be, I think, mainly the compute power requirement. Being a data center player for at least the last 10 years, what has driven us to also then now further invest into Malaysia was probably the fact that as a DC player, we needed to expand due to the demand that's coming. And the demand is actually from all of us. It is individual users. It's everyone using mobile, everyone using a computer. That has created a demand for significant utilization. And whilst STT GDC were one of the leaders in Singapore, and Singapore had already for a very longest time established itself as a data center hub, the demand that's been coming from the client base that we've had, customer base that had made us require to expand that DC portfolio that we had. And we obviously then started to look at all the countries where it would make sense to establish, right? Obviously, population would be a big factor, right? For that matter, in Southeast Asia, Thailand, Philippines, Indonesia would be the biggest countries.
And Vietnam, right?
And Vietnam, much bigger than Malaysia. Correct. So the question would be, how did it so happen that Malaysia became the hub? Like the factors of power, we can't say there's no power in Indonesia. You can't say there's no water in Indonesia. You can't say there's no talent in Indonesia. You can't say that, right? These countries have all these criteria. My personal viewpoint was from an STT point, the connectivity that Singapore had, rightly or wrongly, historically, the fact that Singapore is probably the most connected island state city in the world. 26 submarine sea cable landing points. Go check out London. Doesn't have that many. So now we made a clear decision that the requirement for talent, power, water, and connectivity all put together placed Malaysia as the perfect formula for establishing data center, proliferation of data centers as an investment for SDCC.
Okay, excellent, interesting. There's also very high praise there. Chiam, do you want to take this now?
All right, just testing. Well, good afternoon, and thank you thank you to the host for having me here, and Karamjit, thank you for having me on the panel. So just a little bit of introduction, because most of you may not know who Equinix is. So Equinix operates the world's largest number of connected data centers. At last count, we were looking at almost 270 data centers across 73 metros. And this all forms a very robust digital ecosystem, making up of players like cloud providers, network service providers, industries, and enterprise customers. So why Malaysia, right? So there are four major factors. Now, of course, there are other factors like, you've heard about power, water, rates, and all that, but I want to single out the four main, which we think were the key differentiators in why we chose Malaysia. Number one, of course, is the favorable foreign direct investment policies, and also the My Digital initiative, which clearly is aimed at driving Malaysia to be a digital economy powerhouse. So that factored very strongly in our decision. Secondly, now because we believe in interconnection, our model is interconnection around the world, so strong network connectivity becomes very important for us, right? So, and Malaysia ranks highly in terms of data center location, choice of data center location in ASEAN after Singapore, right? Because of the strong network connectivity and high internet penetration. Now, at last count, I believe we got more than 20 subsea cables that are connecting Malaysia to the rest of the world. Okay. Now, the third factor being, you've seen or heard over the past couple of years, the proliferation of cloud regions in Malaysia. Now, again, because of our interconnected data center and the cloud service providers and network service providers all being in our ecosystem, it makes sense for us to be here, to be part of these cloud regions that are already established here or being established here. And finally, the spillover from Singapore, right? So we limited data center capacity and of course restriction on new builds. You find that it creates a spillover effect. Now, since we're already running a number of data centers in Singapore, so for us, extending into Johor as part of our campus is easy, right? And we have that done, and so that naturally takes up the spillover workload from Singapore. So basically, those were the four main factors why we chose Malaysia, apart from the rest of the other things like cheaper land, power, and the rest.
Okay, so interesting that the announcement from some of the hyperscalers, right, when they were saying they're going to set up, data center regions in Malaysia, maybe was also a trigger for you. Hey, these guys said that we need to be there. So obviously, for them to make a decision here, it's not because we had a brilliant policy, but suddenly they felt the business case was already strong for them to be in Malaysia. Right? Because no one who's here is doing us any favors that, hey, we should support Malaysia, nice tropical weather. Gunung Tahan is the world's oldest rainforest. Let's be there. It's business needs that have brought them here serving customers. So after you seeing the early tier coming in, you say we got to be there also, and it triggered for everything else to happen. Okay, interesting. So let me now move on to the question for Rainer. Very German name, but obviously is not a German. So Rainer, Siemens has had a strong presence in Malaysia, right? Over a century, with its first recorded sales, and I didn't know this, an industrial motor back in 1908. And you are not the salesperson for that, right? Okay, now, because it's in sales, so I was just wondering. Otherwise, I would give you credit for that. Okay, you don't get credit for that. But throughout the years, right, the company has played a key role in nation building, obviously, driving transformation across industries, infrastructure, as well as fostering collaboration between government, industry, and education. And they do a lot in education in Malaysia, actually. So now your commitment to the country is evident in the solutions you provide through your businesses, all of which support growth in the economy. So my question is, as we are already a data center hub, what role are you playing to enable this further?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Karamjit, for your good question, and welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining us today here and also online as well. I think regarding Siemens' role, I think similar to what Adila was mentioning, a lot of people see Siemens a lot of time as like a supplier or a producer of products. But actually, we see ourselves as a technology company as well. And basically, our role is actually to use our technology to solve the real-world problems that our customers and the market sees. I think this morning we've had a long laundry list of like all the issues that the industry and data centers is facing. And I'm sure my fellow panelists here also in their organizations have a lot of issues and problems that they are facing on a day-to-day basis as well. So our role is to use our technology, in this case, to make data centers run more efficiently. And by more efficiently, I think this morning we've talked about like all the limited resources that this nation has in terms of like energy, electricity, and also water as well. So our technology is enabling like data centers to use these resources more efficiently as well. It also helps them to be more resilient. Basically, we have like resilient from potential failures, both of the physical type, like for example, real life like fires, like our division in firefighting systems is one of the leading technology providers in Malaysia alone, as well as those like more new and nebulous like dangers such as those online. through cybersecurity, which is, I think maybe most of the people in this room know that actually Siemens is also involved in this kind of like industry and this kind of solutions as well. Then finally, I think the other issue that is also related is, of course, in terms of sustainability as well. Yep. Making sure that data centers, one, can run in the long term. That means a very viable business in terms of like ensuring that it's not only basically green, but also profitable as well. And we support this like through the idea of digital twins, where you reduce wastage in terms of like designing and maintaining data centers, as well as like the elimination of like greenhouse gases in electrical substations, which is, if for those who are not in the know, electrical substations use a greenhouse gas which is 33,000 times more potent than CO2.
33,000 times?
33,000 times. And then it stays in the atmosphere for a few thousand years as well. It does not like, it has a half-life of a few thousand years, so it's not something that will disappear overnight. But positive steps have been taken globally to eliminate the use of it, and we would like to see that proliferate here in Malaysia as well. But basically, just to summarize everything, is basically to help everyone in this room actually to solve their problems, whatever they may be. It could be at scale, it could be a small one, and it could be a large one as well.
Interesting. Yeah, I think your MD earlier also spoke about, you are aiming to solve problems. So Siemens likes problems, because then you can come in and say, hey, we can help you solve. Which is why your MD is sitting next to Charles now, right? We've got huge water problems on the horizon. Okay. But I guess, interesting, just Raina, one question, because you said you're a technology company, so that kind of surprises me, because I see you all more as very much as an engineering, company. And when you say you're a technology company, meaning you have now software plays an increasing role in the suite of solutions you offer to the market. Is that what you're saying when you're saying you're a technology company?
Yes, indeed. I mean, everybody knows like equates like Siemens in like maybe circuit breakers or switch gears, things which are physical. But actually, we are one of the biggest industrial software companies in the entire world. I mean, for example, like some of the attendees here today are already using our software to model grids, for example, so that they can, instead of like using real life models and then wait for and hope that nothing will happen in the long term, they can simulate and model this like difficulties and problems that may arise and build up scenarios and then figure out what are the best strategies in order to deal with them. And we offer this kind of technology to the data center builders and designers as well, that they can use digital twin technology in order to model a dynamic a real-life model of a data center that's constantly running. And before implementing any changes or even building the first one, figure out what are the potential challenges that could occur, that could happen, and then what are the best ways to deal with them before they even occur.
Okay, interesting. So digital twins could even be a solution to the problem that Charles was talking about, right? Where we've got an emerging crisis in terms of water usage, right, for data centers. Okay. Cool. Okay, now the next part is easy. It's one same. I seldom like to do this, but it's a question that I'm going to ask all of them because
Hi, Karamjit. I think Adila has.
Oh, really? Yeah. Okay,
would
fine,
like
Adila.
to add something to that.
Please disagree. Please disagree.
No, I'm not here to disagree. Actually, I just wanted to add something because thank you very much. I think you had a great summary of what we were saying. What makes Malaysia attractive, right? Which is essentially, at the end of the day, people want to use the technology that data centers enable. There's one more piece that I think Datuk Prabha mentioned, which is policies. So there's a lot of types of policies. There's definitely investment policies. There's land management, water management, data center development policies. But there's also policies that make the country an attractive place for people to want to use the infrastructure here. Meaning, do you feel comfortable knowing that Malaysia is where your data is stored in the data centers available here. So I just wanted to highlight that's another area of competitive advantage that I think is really where we can emerge as a leader to drive that vision of being a regional hub. Sorry, back to where you were.
Okay, yeah. No, so, policies around data privacy, right? Data security. Interesting. I think when Satya Nadella was here last year, I was told that was one of the points he emphasized to the government, that he liked what Malaysia was doing. So something that's very unsexy, right? But yet, this gives us that reassurance that, yeah, we can come into Malaysia. I mean, if we didn't protect IP way back from like 25, 30 years ago, nobody would have been here also, right, in the scale that they are. Okay, interesting. So let's move on to a question now I'm forced to add this, right? AI. So AI is everywhere. Everyone's talking about it. I mean, France just had a national AI conference, right, over the last 2 days, and they're going big in that space. And nuclear instantly was the key value proposition that the president was brandishing. Hey, we're going to give you clean energy, limitless energy. So interesting. But coming back to here now, we're all talking about AI. So from 2022 to 2023, what were your customers seeking from you? And have their needs shifted right since then? And 2022, 23, maybe AI was just emerging, so it'll be interesting. That's why we're asking this question, how the conversation with customers back then versus what happened, now. And has the rise of AI changed the expectations from their cloud service providers and data center providers? And for Siemens, how do you see the company playing a role in this transformation? But so Reina, you're very quickly grabbing the mic. Hold on. Let me ask Chiam first, right? And then we'll work our way down this time sequentially.
So from the data center industry point of view, the first obviously is having AI-ready data centers. Right now, clearly the accelerated demand or AI adoption is requiring a situation never seen before. It's an unprecedented level of computing power, storage, and network that we've never seen in the industry, even in my so many years in the industry. So we're seeing a level that is just beyond what we've seen in the past. Now, this requires purpose-built, scalable, and sustainable data center to support the kind of AI workload that we're going to see today and in the future. Now, the second thing is about how they deploy their AI workloads. See, over the past 2 years, a lot of organizations or enterprises, when they attempt to look at generative AI, they exclusively use the public cloud for their POCs or just testing out and driving simple applications on public cloud. And I think they've learned that you can't just use public cloud for every workload, right? So we're going to see a concept called cloud rebalancing. Now, if you haven't heard it, it's going to come out soon, right? Where enterprises or customers now say, I want to have the right to move part of my infrastructure to on-premises or to co-location data centers like people like Equinix, right? Now, why is that? Because they now realize that they want to have the freedom of running different business critical workloads across different clouds. It's no longer an exclusive public cloud, but they want to have the option to be able to do that. Now, the second thing is really about controlling their data, right? Because in a public cloud, there's a concept called you move data to the cloud, or rather you move data to the model, as we say in AI. Now, you try to bring all the data into the model because you are running off a cloud. Correct. But when you do cloud rebalancing, what you're doing is you're moving the model to the data. Now, this morning you heard about data sovereignty, you heard about data privacy, and that's going to come in, right? And especially in the AI world where people realize that data is going to be your most important asset. Some countries are putting national security rules on data now, which means whatever inference model that you're developing, you cannot use the old model, which is saying, bring all the data here and we process it. You have got to develop your inference model and process the American data in North America, European data in Europe, Asia-Pac data in Asia-Pac, but the same inference model is being developed and spread around the world. So this is a concept where you say, bring the model to the data. With this, you have absolute control over your data. You have the ability to move your data quickly and then seamlessly across different clouds. You have control over data sovereignty. You have control over any data regulation and that might come out along the way, while at the same time exploiting the full potential of AI deployments.
Very interesting. Wow. Some new concept even for me as a tech journalist. So lots of reading to do this weekend, Shyam. And I'll be calling you also. Okay, very interesting. So Adila, I'm not sure whether you can take this question, but give it a shot.
Can I maybe recap what the question was? It was, what are customers now expecting
Yes,
in
correct.
terms
And how has AI,
Right,
now
yeah.
in 2022, 23, and how, whether that has changed, last year. Obviously not this year, we're only 1 month in.
No, I mean, absolutely. I think customers' expectations, the more sophisticated customers in particular, who are aware of what is available and what is capable of being done by technology now, definitely the expectations are there that technology service providers can offer that resiliency, scalability, availability, security, ability to control certain workloads, to wall off certain workloads from others. So those are all functionalities that technology providers are fully expecting to meet, actually, because with how we do business now in a digital era, AI capabilities, security, trust is really number one. So that goes without question. What I do think, though, is that for the whole country to be competitive, I think that understanding really needs to build out across all the economy, not just a few sophisticated players having this understanding of what their needs should be, really. They should be able to deliver they should be able to have all these needs met, and not think that it's something that's incredibly complicated. It should be part of doing business in a digital economy. And my hope is that that builds out not just among the larger enterprise customers, but across the country. Yeah.
It will take time, but incidentally, Chiam tomorrow said he's going to be in Penang and talking to an SME audience, right? About what this space is all about. And we're still in such an early stage in bringing the information and knowledge and removing the fear factor right down. So it'll take plenty of discussions such as this. Okay. Daryl, you want to take that question?
Okay. So from our customers' point of view, also, I'm not going to repeat what Cham has said and Adila has said, the demands are the same, but I've got to add on to that saying, our customers are starting to hear people like Charles Santiago, right? Our customers are starting to resonate the point raised by Mr. Charles Santiago, who has been looking after the Klang River for a long, long, long time. So we hear that, and we do a lot of investments into the sustainable part, right? So as a company, we also have a big sustainable goal. The workloads are being driven in a bigger way. Let's not ever think that processing power is going to get less. OpenAI is only going to explode and maybe really, really, really adopt AI and processing and compute in a bigger way, right? So that demand is going to come. It's companies that's going to focus on sustainability because that's the demand by the customers. So we really, and that's to trigger on that point, Tenaga Nasional is doing a great job, right? They're one of the few big international grid companies, national grid companies, sorry, that have got a transition program in place, right, to go towards renewable energy. Our Energy Commission has also got CREST program that is looking at corporate renewable energy schemes. So we as a company, and this is in the DNA of us also being of a Singaporean-based business. Sustainability in Singapore is the ethos and is in the DNA of every single Singaporean. So the businesses also drive that same agenda. So PUE is a big important thing. So we have that carbon neutral program, and we make sure that by the year 2030, which is 5 years from now, we are going to be 100% carbon neutral. So that's a demand that's being brought in by the customers who listen to Charles Santiago.
Okay, very interesting. So before I move on to Reina, because you said that the demands for power are only going to increase now, hasn't the minor earthquake that DeepSeek caused, 2 weeks ago, making people question whether that's becoming almost like a a fact of the industry, right? More power will be used because of the demand for AI. Do you think that's not going to happen then? Because and then I'll get Chiam also to answer that quickly before Rene takes the question, right? About the DeepSeek impact on the need for insatiable power, which I'm hoping has corrected that perception.
So Karamjit, this one is like a big debate today, you know. There really no real answer, but all I can say is, if I was to draw parallels in industry, and two parallels I want to draw. One I was already talking to you all about. By the way, guys, Siemens, I'm going to be a little bit of a Siemens salesman right now.
Oh, sorry, Daryl started his career in Siemens.
I started my career in Siemens. So to those of you who own Siemens, who've never been to the Siemens Museum in Munich, please do. It is an amazing museum, right? You've got a car there, 1927 model Siemens. They were the first electric vehicle in the world, by the way, right? Long before EVs being talked about, 1905, I think, Siemens made electric vehicles. Now, there was another company that came with a car called, and the owner of this company went around saying, you can have that car in any color you want as long as it's black. Model T Ford. Right? They commercialized automobiles into mass market. It became cheaper, everyone could afford it. Did that shut down Daimler-Benz and BMW? Or Mercedes-Benz and BMW are still the biggest companies in the world today, still selling more cars? Proliferation, adoption. The second parallel I can draw today, when you have more utilization of processing power when things get open AI, is GSM. Encik Nasar, you know, from Tenaga Nasional, and I were actually also colleagues in Siemens. We were there when we were talking about second generation mobile technology. The first generation mobile technology, people with a big battery pack, having a big mobile phone placed in a car could only use it. GSM came and suddenly everyone could have a mobile in their pocket. Then we suddenly had prices. All of a sudden you had $10 mobile phones. Did that shut down companies from selling 5,000 ringgit phones? No. Today we have Apple, we have Samsung, all these brands proliferating in a bigger way, not even worried about the $10 phones. Only because, and if there were phone companies that died along the way, that's maybe because they didn't innovate into the right technology. That's the key. Innovation into right technology and making sure that innovation is part of the DNA will keep the sustainability growing. OpenAI is only going to create more adoption, meaning to say more processing, more power needed. So a 100 megawatt campus, prior to this might have had that so much processing requirement only as a client base, might now double up, right? So that's my viewpoint, right? So the jury is still out there on this point.
Okay. Cham, do you want to just take that quick?
Yeah, what DeepSeek has done, and if you have been following closely, there are two key things that they did, apart from all the logic that they rewrote and all that. Number one is they open sourced the whole thing. Number two, they published their reasoning logic. Now, this is important because it will drive use cases, not just a lot of use cases. Small companies will come out and they start developing industry-based LLM, because once you understand the logic, once you understand the open source behind it, it will drive a lot of SME activities in building LLMs for industry-specific use. Now, previously, as you know, LLMs were only limited to a number of companies who could afford the price of the NVIDIA infrastructure, right? But now, obviously, you're going to see a situation where it's going to be a lot of small companies coming up, developing industry-based LLMs, a lot more use cases. Now, there's something interesting that will happen because the next wave is going to be AGI. Now, you know what AGI is, right? Because the logic is now open sourced, you basically speed up the development of AGI into the world, which previously only a few people could control it. Right? So I see tremendous potential in this AI space because we're going to see stuff that we thought would take years to develop suddenly comes up in months. So watch the next space, AGI.
Okay, so all this just delves to your point that the demand for power will keep increasing. Okay. Bad news then. Adila?
I promise it'll only take 30 seconds.
Hey, for a policy person, you're chipping in quite a bit, man. Well done.
Well, the topic is AI, and I did want to just add that this will be normal. There will be many innovations in AI, and genuinely any innovation that can grow the industry, help people get better outcomes more efficiently, using less power, using less resources, is very good. And what I would say is that this is how it will continue to evolve. So for example, being able to understand the reasoning might now be adopted as a safety feature or a responsible AI feature, for example. And there are many, many open source AI models of various different sizes, is what I wanted to say. So yeah, yes, this will continue to evolve, and this goes towards exactly the point where customer expectations and how industries grow and evolve with technology enablement will just keep on growing exponentially.
Okay, interesting. Thank you, Adila. Reina, do you want me to read the question again? Okay, yeah, because I had to dovetail. So, like the question is about AI being everywhere, right? So, and asking them what their customers were asking them in 2022, 23 versus now, which means last year. And what is the role that you see Siemens playing in this transformation?
Well, I think maybe just to also bring it back to the first panel as well, I think what Dato Prabha mentioned as well is that AI actually is not something that is just spawned overnight over the last couple of years. It has been around. And to be truthful, Siemens as a technology company actually has been looking into and researching applications for AI in our own products and solutions over the number of years already. So it is not something that has just been born out the last few years that we're jumping onto a bandwagon, because we do see real benefits from using AI. Because especially in terms of what we're talking about today, winning and sustaining businesses. So we are looking at ways and how we can use AI to help our customers, like for example, the data centers here today, in order to be more efficient and be more competitive as well in a landscape that is, I believe, quite competitive.
Yeah.
So how do we do this? I mean, maybe I'll just give one example. There's a measure called thermal optimization, where basically it is to help data centers. I think speaking to Cham this morning, he's talking about data centers is more than just IT. I mean, it's a whole, like an ecosystem of like electrical, cooling, water as well. And then one aspect of it, cooling, is actually not one of Siemens' like core competencies, to be honest. We don't sell products in cooling. But as I mentioned, we are a technology supplier. So actually, we provide technology that helps companies with their cooling, especially data centers as well, whereby we use, there's one part of thermal optimization which we call white space cooling optimization, where we help them to use their cooling more effectively, more efficiently. And key to that is the center part of it is an AI engine, where basically it is collecting a lot of data that is being produced by a network of sensors inside your data halls. Then basically it uses its AI engine, AI principle called like a machine learning, called supervised learning as well. So basically it uses and learns from the data it collects to make reasonable and correct decisions on what to do in terms of the cooling strategy for a data center. And sometimes it goes beyond, and when necessary, it goes beyond that as well. Instead of just like basically alerting your human operator, it can also implement strategy directly as well, and then learning from the results of this strategy. So basically, in real life terms, this has helped like in terms of some of our customers to reduce their energy usage annually by about 30%. And I think that's when we talk about PUE and efficiency, and I think that's a very good savings that can occur. So we're thinking, of course, you're thinking for AI in terms of the needs of your customers. Yes. But from our point of view, AI is a tool that can be used by not only the data centers as well, but I think basically from every walk of life to make you yourself more competitive in whatever that is that you do.
Yeah, I mean, the smartphones already are coming with AI embedded in them, right? And you'll have an agentic agent, a Charles Santiago AI. So it is quite scary. So I won't be an early adopter of that. You guys carry on and let me know 5 years later. Then I'll join in. Okay. All right, now let me just, so I think, so Reina is interesting, right? You said AI is nothing new for them. They've been doing it for a long time. I met a guy who's got his PhD now, but he said about 15 years ago when he was doing his master's in University Malaya, they were already offering you could do a master's in AI, but it was never sexy then, right? It only became sexy 2 years ago, really. So that's just, and you needed Silicon Valley to inject, their hype into it to make it sexy. Now, of course, it's relevant and scary also. Well, let's not go there. This is not the panel for it. So last question. What technologies, and Shyam will start again with you first, right? Does your organization believe will be key to your business growth, right, over the next 3 to 5 years? And more importantly, what must data centers in Malaysia do to stay at the forefront of these trends?
Right. So very quickly, mindful we are running quite short on time. So 3 key areas that will be key to the data center industry. Number 1 will be obviously meeting the demand of the AI workloads. Number 2 will be enabling enterprise customers in especially adopting the hybrid multi-cloud environment for these customers who are looking for more flexible infrastructure to deploy their mission-critical business workload. And third, for Equinix, will be in the area of providing interconnection services for our global customers who are looking at making Malaysia their data center hub, and we're seeing a lot of that, of overseas customers who are making Malaysia their hub using our digital infrastructure. And similarly, for Malaysian companies to establish a digital presence outside of Malaysia, right? So we're seeing companies looking at that through our data center. I think for Malaysia as a whole, for the data center industry as a whole, now, I think we're at an infancy stage right now. The data center industry in Malaysia's infancy stage compared to a lot of the more established metros, some of which are facing growing pains, right? Now, being a greenfield development, here's the benefit for us, for a data center in Malaysia. We could look at green building design, the latest in green building design. We can look at integrating newer and more effective energy sources, right? And we can look at new power, new cooling technology. All these to be able to continue to meet the demands of the digital economy and yet doing it in a sustainable manner. So for Malaysia, for the Malaysian data center industry, for its long-term health and long-term growth, the key thing for us is to focus on sustainable, AI-ready, highly interconnected data centers that will build a digital ecosystem that would encourage the adoption of industry-driven use cases. I think if we can do that well, we will get a very, very great market leadership in terms of how the industry is going to be like in Malaysia. Now, studies have shown in some of the more established metros that the data center industry or digital infrastructure, some call that way, has contributed significantly to the GDP and the digital economy of those nations. And I believe we can do that for Malaysia as well. Thank you.
Oh, interesting, man. Hopefully you all will track that, right? And produce an economic impact study, maybe 2 years down the road, together with Microsoft and even ST, right? Yeah. Adila, you want to take this question?
Yeah, sure. Actually, I'd like to jump off that. That's a great, I think, very great holistic response. And maybe I can just add on to that by using the phrase sustainable AI economy.
Sustainable
so,
AI, okay.
Again, if I recall back to how I first sort of like depicted where the data center industry lies, in what I like to describe as a technology stack for enabling the entire AI economy, right? I'll very quickly go into this. So we like to see AI as the next general purpose technology that really drives socioeconomic growth very exponentially because it can be adopted in every single aspect of our lives, right? So the analogy we like to draw is, for example, a technology such as the printing press. When the printing press was invented, that enabled publications to be published, that drove many different industries such as the publishing industry, the writing industry, entertainment industry, advertising industry, and around that many other sub-economies arose. So AI can be the same, and really that basis, that foundation of the AI economy will be the infrastructure. And so with that, you can already imagine how critical this is and how valuable this is in the future AI economy. And what I did want to add to that is that, to Daryl's point actually, it's not just about delivering the technology, it's driving the adoption of the technology broadly across society. So that does also involve making sure that the talent ecosystem is there, not just broadly within society, but within each industry to enable those industries to widely adopt. So yeah, bright future, exponential growth.
Okay, interesting. Daryl, what technologies for next 3 to 5 years?
So, you know, from our perspective, two areas we would be looking at for technology investments or, you know, innovation investments. I think first would be where we are based in a country, looking at what's going to drive our carbon neutral agenda. So looking at partnerships with TNB, for example, in programs which is going to get us as quickly as possible to renewable energy options. Also with strategic partners in country for renewable energy. So a big focus on innovation in country with local partners for renewable energy going carbon neutral, right? That's one area of big technology investments that we look at. Second, within our data centers itself, we take a very sharpened approach on a cookie cutter design, looking at how we can increase efficiency, improve efficiency on the cooling, the AI workloads that's coming in. So there's a lot of investments also in the technology aspects to drive that part of it to be as efficient as possible on cooling technologies, whether it's liquid cooling, immersion cooling, whatever. So, and at the same time, on the design of our rack spaces itself, what can we do for as much efficiency as possible, adopting it as a standard across the board to make sure that cost is then brought down. So at the end of the day, it's also about making sure that it's going to be as cost effective as possible. Yeah, so those are the main areas of technology investments we as a company focus on.
Okay, very good. Interesting, thanks. Rainer, you have the last say.
All right, I mean, like, I think in view of the time, so maybe I just wrap up also in terms of like what I've covered some of the technologies that I've mentioned in terms of like a digital twin and also in terms of like an industrial use of AI and also the elimination of CFC gases in electrical substations, because for me, these are all sustainable types of technology. And speaking personally as somebody who has been working with switchgears for like 20 over years, and also personally as a father of children as well, I think the legacy we leave behind with our technology plays a very important, that we leave the world a better place than when we left it. So that's why all these three things I think are critical in reducing wastage, in preserving, in minimizing environmental impact, and leaving a better life for those who come after us.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. That really wraps it up. It's so interesting how sustainability is going to be a key part of the value proposition moving forward also for us, you know. We are already like a winner, but you know, remain a winner, right, in the data center space. That's absolutely critical and really very tight targets for Singapore. But I totally get it when you say, you know, being sustainable is in the DNA of Singapore. Not enough water, right, and not enough everything. So it's very interesting that benefits because it triggers, channels up into the businesses. Everything you do, you got to be sustainable. Very interesting. But Malaysia is the land of plenty, so we take things for granted. I was telling Charles when he said that we are water stressed. I know somebody who's a Malaysia second. They retired to Malaysia with the wife, and he's in Penang. And he said that he picked Malaysia because Malaysia is one of the few water positive countries in the world. And I was shocked. I said, what do you mean there's such a thing as water positive countries? And there is a ranking somewhere like Malaysia is ranked among the top 20 water positive countries in the world. And then for Charles to say we are water stressed, then there's another ranking I checked on water stressed countries. There are 180 countries being evaluated, and thankfully Malaysia is 104. When I say thankfully, normally you want to be top 10, right? This time you don't want. Top 10 means you got literally no water. So you all got to be like camels. But there's 180, but we are moderately stressed, so there's a lot needs to be done. So I told Charles, you know, don't hold back, don't be everyone's friend, right? Push your message across hard and fast so that we get action taken there. But also now, we obviously created this discussion, also these two panels, right? To trigger action in all of you, right? In the businesses you're doing, in what you want to do, what you need to do. So with that, we will end now and hopefully have a very good, robust lunch discussion also, okay? Thank you all for your time, for staying back, so many of you. A round of applause to our panelists, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you, panelists. May I kindly request you to remain on stage as we would like to present the token of appreciation. I would now like to invite our Senior VP of Smart Infrastructure, Mr. Siva, on stage, followed by a quick photo session. Let's give a big round of applause to our panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our conference for today. We hope you've gained valuable insights throughout the sessions. On behalf of Siemens, once again, we would like to thank you all for joining us both in person and virtual. We will now like to invite those who are here today with us for the networking luncheon in Wow Bulan 3. Thank you very much.
It's human nature, a hunger to explore, to imagine, to invent.